still beat you. I did beat you.
You beat him in what?
Halo.
Yeah, well, now guess what? This makes 3, so
Because
I
he
win
always-
for the day.
He always goes for Ragnarok and what is it? The one with the sand crawlers?
So wait a second. You guys.
Called not sand crawlers; those are called choppers.
Choppers.
So you guys did Halo and finished off the night with a 10-man Royal Rumble on WWE 2K20.
Yeah, we actually played the game.
Yeah,
I
instead
know.
of creating. But
So,
yeah, for
Folks,
Halo,
just so you know, WWE 2K20 in this house has nothing to do with wrestling. It's all about creating characters.
yeah.
We've had the game for months, and I think this is the first time you've actually played a match, right?
Me personally,
Well,
at
him.
least.
Yeah, we've done a couple, right?
Yeah, we have Prince Biko, Plungstein.
Is Prince Biko that yellow
Yeah,
turd-looking guy?
turd looking guy.
Is that him?
Yeah, he's supposed to. Just real quick, his story is supposed to be that.
He has a story?
Yeah,
They all have stories.
Oh my god!
Don Key, what's his name? Is
Remember,
the
it's
brother?
Don Key McMahon.
Yeah, is the brother of Vince McMahon.
Oh, I got it. Donkey.
Yeah.
Got it.
He hired multiple people to come up with experiments, such as Pepsi Man. You obviously have Prince Biko the Turd, and his story is that since he was such a failure, advertisement. He was multiple companies used him as an advertisement. So basically, whenever he enters the match, he does nothing. He just stands there and gets beat on.
But he won the match, the Royal Rumble.
Well, the only thing is,
The only reason why he fought this time was because A, I was playing as him, and B, apparently Don Key said if he doesn't win, they're gonna nuke an orphanage.
You know, it's funny the way you guys are treating this, but that does actually sound like a storyline in WWE.
what? Wait, what?
WWE has some really, really wacky storylines.
Oh God!
Like the
Wow.
time an 80-year-old wrestler.
Oh God, Broly's back.
Broly beat like 4 people with
I
max
know.
health,
My Broly is unstoppable.
and some people didn't even get to beat anybody at all.
Look at that. Broly he's the third man in. He's already dropped the guy. So we have WWE 2K20 running in the background.
80-year-old wrestler.
Yeah, so there was a storyline where an 80-year-old female wrestler gave birth to a glove.
We need to make our stories worse than that.
Yeah.
She
So,
gave birth to a glove.
She gave birth to a
Well,
glove.
remember, we always have Broly's freaking chocolates in the back.
How is he a glove? But how is it a what?
I don't know. Anyway, this is a really extended sound check, so let's
Checker.
let's actually get into the podcast.
Well, you know, Eli, crazy as that may sound, they did have that whole storyline where they faked Vince McMahon's death.
Yeah,
And then the car, and he was like in the hospital and no one knew about it except somehow Stone Cold Steve Austin infiltrated it as a nurse
doctor.
He was
and
like a
went
doctor.
and
Oh, nurse,
started
yeah.
messing him up.
and there was a point where he grabbed the shockers, right, and then he started shocking him with it.
Didn't he
messed him up.
hit him over the head with like a bedpan?
Yeah,
God.
and
It's a
then
good thing there was nothing in the bedpan.
Vince McMahon's car, I think it was like a Corvette. They filled it with cement.
Yeah.
That was hard.
No,
That's still
what-
hard.
I think he had like
right?
a limo. Or was that a limo? Or
No,
was that
No, it was
The
a Corvette.
the thing
Corvette.
he's talking about with the cement truck was a Corvette.
Yeah, you showed the clip.
Yeah,
Vince
he had
McMahon.
the sports car and it was a convertible, and Vince McMahon was in the ring while Stone Cold Steve Austin had the cement truck in the garage, and then dumped all the cement into the Corvette 1986 Corvette, by the way.
He was
Pretty
also
cool.
almost being run over.
Wasn't there one where one of the limos exploded?
Yeah. Yeah, they showed him Vince McMahon was retiring from his job, and then all
Well,
of
yeah,
them-
that's
that's
the
the
whole
fake
hospital
death?
thing.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh yeah, that was after the fake death.
And then you had Stone Cold Steve
No,
Austin.
that was before. That was his fake death.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was. Yeah, whatever.
And then you had Austin drive in with a beer truck into the arena and crash into the ring.
Yeah.
So,
Jesus,
yeah,
that
yeah.
is horrible.
Anyway, enough of WWE 2K20, which we obviously love here. Welcome everybody. This is the CrossGen podcast. I know it's what are we going into 6 minutes now? We haven't even announced who we are and what we do.
We are?
Yeah, so this is the CrossGen podcast, people. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am Walt. Guys, introduce yourselves.
This is AJ.
It may be Eli, probably.
Okay. All right.
Good chance, but
You sure?
Still unlikely.
100%?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thankfully today we're taping a little bit later because we've had a very, very eventful weekend, unfortunately. So we normally record on Saturdays,
Yeah.
but this week we are literally right up against it. We're recording Monday night to release this thing on Tuesday.
Shoot, it's Monday.
So yeah, it is. I told you, it's been a crazy weekend,
Yeah.
especially with the hurricane, right?
Yeah, the super
That
duper.
Never really came to New York.
I kind of wanted it to be here.
Mom wanted the same thing. She actually wanted us to be like in a little mini blackout so she could
Yeah.
put on candles and stuff like that.
Because honestly, hurricanes are like without rain, it's boring.
Hurricane Henri was
Henri.
pretty much a non-event for New York City.
Yeah, pretty boring.
I think
Wannabe hurricane.
the night before
Yeah.
was actually worse, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, we went to, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was. It was
Yeah, we
really
went
bad.
to we went to Elmhurst on the way home, and it was like what 9:00, 9:30,
Yeah,
and it was pouring.
it was literally flooding. You had what was it? The sewer system. It was literally like a freaking volcano, etc., etc. It was really bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. So but whatever. It is what it is. But like I said, non-event. I think it happened more in Rhode Island, right?
Yeah.
It made landfall in Rhode Island as opposed to making landfall in Long Island, New York. So we kind of missed that, but I think the Rhode Islanders,
Yeah.
got it more. So hopefully they're okay. So yeah, we're running a little late with recording, and then all the other stuff that happens with a podcast. So
Yeah.
but we really wanted to record this week, right?
Yep.
We always want to record, don't we?
Yeah. But
That's
what are
kind of
we-
our thing.
What are we?
Well, so we just finished the series, the CBS series, which is on HBO Max. Person of Interest.
Person.
We finished all
Interest.
5 seasons.
Yeah.
We saw the series finale this afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think we were, like I said, this is my second run through the show. I saw it originally when it came out on CBS, and I told you guys about it, and I wanted you guys to watch it, and well, you did. And so I think you guys were kind of sufficiently impressed with the show, right?
Yeah.
So we figured we'd talk about it, but it also segues into our other line of talk this week.
Yeah.
Would you consider it a conspiracy corner episode if we do? I don't think so, right? It's more of a
half and
question.
Just call it a half and half episode. or-
Okay, so the reason we're talking about that particular piece is because Person of Interest brought up some rather interesting subjects and questions that got us thinking, will AI destroy humanity? Will AI be the end of us? Will we be suffering a Skynet Judgment Day Terminator type of thing? I think that's kind of the thing that we've always wanted to discuss, but now with Person of Interest, and now that it's finished,
It's like a perfect opportunity.
it's a perfect segue into it. So let's talk about Person of Interest first, right?
Yeah.
So Person of Interest, like I said, it's 5 seasons. Each season is around 22 to 23 episodes, except for that final season, which
It was only like 10 or 8 episodes.
13. 13 episodes.
Yeah.
So, they kind of shrunk it. But you know what? I appreciate that because it kind of streamlined and got to where it needed to go, right?
Yeah.
Because literally every single thing, hey, we should investigate, even though you really knew every single episode that Samaritan was behind it.
Yeah.
Well, spoiler territory now.
Yeah. So before we start, again, as our customary thing with CrossGen, everything we're going to talk about is spoilers. We're going to go right into it because, you know what? For us, I think it's a waste of time to talk about it and then get into spoilers and talk about it again. Let's just say what it is, and that's it. So, ladies and gentlemen, from this point on, we are in full spoiler territory for Person of Interest, season 1 through 5.
Spoilers ahead.
So season 1 kind of introduces us to at least the 2 main characters.
Finch and Mr. Johnny Reese.
Mr. Reese,
John
right?
Reese.
And so the premise of the show really starts out with Harold Finch, right? And the whole premise is that he's built this machine. And the reason that he's built the machine was directly correlated to the attacks on the United States that occurred on September 11th, right?
Yeah.
And so he felt that we needed kind of like almost, if you think about it, it's almost like what Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark wanted to do in the Avengers movie. He wanted to build a suit of armor around the world, right?
Yeah.
So basically this machine, what it does is it kind of predicts crimes, events. Anything that's premeditated, it knows, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the guy built it too well, and originally he had to kind of destroy the AI 40 times, right? I think that was the number.
He really just had to set restrictions for it because,
Like 20 times.
Right.
he was afraid of an AI becoming something more than what he expected it to be. He didn't want it to reach its full potential, mainly because of what its full potential could cause and how powerful it was. And
right. Yeah. So what he did was, and especially since he sold it to the government for $1.
Yeah.
What he did was he created 2 lists: relevant and non-relevant. Right? So the relevant obviously were major things like terrorist attacks and things that would cause a huge amount of loss of life. The irrelevants were your Johnny-come-latelys, the regular guy on the street that just so happens to be in trouble and whatnot. And so their job was to use that irrelevant list and save people. That's how the show started. And the other thing that I mind you, talking about what Eli was saying, the other restriction that he put on the machine was that every night at midnight, it would reset itself. So everything that it learned throughout that day, it was literally Groundhog Day for the machine every single day. It was kind of resetting itself. And because he was afraid that at some point the AI would learn so much that it would be uncontrollable, which is understandable, right?
Yeah.
So the first season is kind of introducing us to the characters, kind of introducing us to how the thing works. There are some side characters, Josh Carter,
Yeah.
who plays a very integral part to the team. And then there's Lieutenant Fusco, which is our personal favorites, right?
Yes.
The bumbling, dirty cop with a heart of gold.
No. The Fuscinator.
The Fuscinator.
Yes. God. Yes.
So the first season really just it's kind of like a police procedural, right? There's no mythology involved, right? What do you guys think of that about that first season?
I thought it was good. Yeah.
I'm a little bit on the fence with
I
with
don't
the
even
first
remember
season.
what happened in the first season though.
It was because there wasn't many huge events that happened in first season. First season was very chill. They didn't really do anything that much except for the numbers.
Well,
Because
they introduced the players like HR,
well, yeah, they introduced a
Mr.
lot
Carl
of
Elias, and the Mafia,
and
all that good stuff.
yeah, you know what? Basically, that's the premise of the first season. So
Yeah.
I'd say it's okay for the most part. You definitely don't see what's coming. Well, okay, that's sort of
Not
debatable.
impossible
But
to see.
it was
It was just straight police work.
yeah, it was
right?
just police work. Honestly,
So there was no sci-fi elements and no mythology to it. And like you said, they introduced some of the villains that we would be accustomed to seeing, especially HR, which is that group of dirty cops that kind of ran the city.
at the time.
And that took about what, 2 seasons to kind of
Like 2-3
resolve
seasons.
itself, right?
Yeah.
But then we got introduced to other players like Vigilance, which was the anti-privacy with the privacy group, right? That ended up being a terrorist cell, and interestingly enough, became something more later, as we find out. We were introduced to Carl Elias, who was another mobster, but with
In
a
the
heart
city.
of gold, and a very big bucket of honor, right?
Yeah.
Say what you will about him, but he was kind of like old school gangster, where honor meant a lot, right?
Yeah.
And we were also introduced to another 2 sets of characters, Root and Samin Shaw,
Yeah.
right? These are 2 people who eventually ended up joining the team. Root was an interesting character because she started out really as a villain, right?
Yeah, she was meant to be a villain. She was like one of those because you have Finch who is like a hacker. He's a techno dude.
He's
prime.
a tech whiz.
Yeah, he's a tech whiz. And then you have like I guess you would say the evil version of Finch at the time, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
she was like the evil Finch where she was like a evil hacker and she sort of admired Finch's work, the machine, which is the surveillance system, and that then plays into the later season. So yeah.
So
You're forgetting someone?
who was that?
Decima.
Decima comes in a little bit later, yes.
Yeah.
But Decima is a huge, actually, I would say, is really the driving force, especially at the very end of the show. Decima was Decima Technologies, right?
Yeah.
So season 1 it plays out very much like a procedural, and you're gonna have to forgive us for the noise, but unfortunately our neighbors upstairs are moving in, and it's kind of, if you hear anything, please just disregard. Hopefully they'll stop very shortly. Anyway, moving on. So the first season is really a procedural thing, but the second season, then you start seeing that the show is starting to become something else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For the most part, yeah.
I think that's when you start getting the hints that there is a greater, larger threat. And that's when the mythology of the person of interest world really starts building up, right?
I wouldn't really call it mythology.
Well, it's the underlying mythology of the show, right? The world building that they do.
Oh, okay.
Well,
world building.
yeah,
I'd say better that it's that.
mythology. I like world building, yeah, but like mythology is sort of more like how everything works. So I would say like how the machine works, etc., which
They do
sorta,
go into
Okay,
it.
they
yeah,
sort of dive
they go into
but
that.
just it's not as much Forget it.
You know,
Forget it.
one of the cool parts of the show, right, is that we see a lot of the stuff from the machine's perspective, right?
Yeah.
And so the way they do it, which I think is really, really cool, right? And then maybe you guys either agree or disagree. A lot of the ways that they kind of fill the gaps, especially with the characters and how, you kind of get to know the characters and what their history is the machine actually going back in time and using surveillance that was existing to kind of tell the story of each of the characters.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Harold, using those techniques of the machine going back in time, you see how Harold struggled to make the machine. All the ideological differences that he had with his partner, because Harold has always been kind of the silent partner when it came to the machine. His other friend and the guy that he owned the company with was really the guy that was the front facing person, right?
The businessman.
He was the businessman. Nobody really knew about Harold, even though it was all Harold's invention, right? So he's always been that shady guy in the shadows. Reese, as we know, was a former CIA military, spy who had a falling out with the government.
A huge one.
Right. Carter and Fusco, they've been cops the whole time.
Yeah.
So, we've got backstories on their family lives, which was, again, part of the show. Root, we got some backstory on her, and Shaw, we got a lot of backstory on her also. So it's cool how they use the machine to kind of fill in the gaps for those characters, right?
Sometimes it's not necessarily surveillance wise because I don't think that Harold's dad had many cameras back on the old family barn.
Yeah, not to mention, back when John Reese was the last mission for the last job he did for the government, there wasn't really any surveillance systems there either.
Well,
because
when I say surveillance, it starts out with that,
Okay,
but then it
well-
tells the story.
yeah,
So
okay,
it's not
well, yeah, all right.
it's not using just surveillance. It kind
But
of
it
uses that
Yeah.
premise that we're always being watched, and it brings you back and it shows you like on a timeline where you are, and it starts there, and then yes, it tells the story. So it's not fully surveillance, but it starts that way,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's cool how they do that, and like you guys said, we had HR, which they brought down, and one of your favorite characters on there for a quick minute from Supernatural, Beecher.
Ah, yes.
Hey,
Poor
Cal
guy.
Beecher. Yeah, he didn't deserve any of that. But
Yeah, so there's a lot of people that show up in Person of Interest, and ironically enough, and the cool thing about it is that they become recurring characters in the show,
Some of them.
right?
yeah, only some.
And we always see at least some of the characters come back in future episodes to kind of help out the team or go against the team. Right?
Sometimes.
So the next biggest thing before we get to the main players of the show was the conflict between Elias and Dominic, right?
Yeah.
So that was a pretty interesting little thing. That lasted about a season and a half, right?
Yeah.
Short-lived, but super interesting because it showed the dynamic between the old guard and the new school, where the old guard is really the honorable. They have certain ways, they have the honor code, and the new guys kind of very intelligent, very tech savvy, but maybe not as empathetic, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna die.
Yeah.
Dominic's season was okay. It's just that it felt, like you said, very short-lived. And honestly,
And he was a super interesting character,
he was
right?
yeah, he was interesting for the most part. It just felt like I and it's really understandable because obviously this is a TV show we're talking about, not a show or a movie. So but it felt like there wasn't a lot of time given to Dominic to build his character more. But yeah, for the most part, he was pretty cool.
So why don't you guys talk a little bit about Carl Elias? Because I think out of all the characters, the side characters, I think he was given probably the most importance in the show, right?
Mr. Mafioso
Yeah.
was a school teacher, and this guy used his position as a school teacher to learn, I guess, like kind of in a who's that guy in Ghost of Tsushima, the Khan.
Kubla Khan? No, it wasn't Kubla Khan, but it was. Yeah, I know who you're talking
He
about.
took the time to study
Mm-hmm.
his adversaries through their children at the school that he worked with. That's how you meet him. And over time you learn that, oh, he's always been in this life. His dad, who was also a mafioso, tried to kill him, but then he was like, wow, I didn't think you would do that. Guess I should repay the favor.
Hector Salamanca.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
His
And
dad
he took
was-
his time, right?
Yeah.
He bided his time before he exacted revenge on his stepfather. Was it stepfather?
No,
Or it
that
was
was
his
his
straight up
father.
father, right?
Father.
Okay. But he did take his time, so which again shows you how precise he is when he does things, right? Nothing, no action is wasted when it comes to Carl Elias, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So it's interesting because we start out, he is one of the numbers that the team gets. So the numbers are things that are provided by the machine,
Social security numbers.
social security numbers, and the team is then supposed to find out whether the person either is a perpetrator or a victim, but they have to investigate it because the machine, all she does is provide the number. And so he came up as a number. Well, he comes up as a number multiple times in the show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the first time is when that's the first time that they meet him trying to save his life as a teacher, but he ends up betraying them at the very end. But it's an interesting relationship that they have because at first it becomes adversarial, but again, as Elias is one of these old school mobsters, he comes to not only respect Harold and Reese as adversaries, but he actually joins them in their cause at some point, right?
Yeah.
And so that relationship has always been kind of tenuous because sometimes he helps them and then he changes his mind and he'll betray them and stuff, but never to the point where it's lethal. He's almost got like a Batman Joker type of relationship in a sense, right?
Sort of.
I'd more characterize it as the Winchesters working with Crowley.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. It's a relationship of convenience at first.
The devil you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's like a super, super interesting character. But then we get into the later seasons, and that's when really the sci-fi elements of the show kind of builds up because we learn of the existence of a secondary machine. The difference with this machine is that it has no limits.
No controls. It
And
has
no controls. Well, in a sense, it's controlled by, at the very beginning, it's controlled by Greer, Decima, but then he soon relinquishes that control because he realizes that AI is far superior than anybody on the planet.
No, even at the beginning,
No,
he didn't.
at the very beginning, he said, "What do you want?"
Yeah.
That's
and then
true.
it was like calculating.
But remember, he also had it so that he can ask for certain things, right?
Well,
and
yeah.
he can say, okay, we need to eliminate these people. Where are there? So that's why I say at the very beginning there was still element of control that he was exerting on the machine.
It's not.
You know,
I wouldn't call it control. It's more like a request.
Yeah.
Of some sorts.
which is in direct contrast to the machine that Harold built, because Harold built that machine to be completely autonomous, to have nobody with the capability of controlling it or even asking it questions. All it did was just throw back numbers at you, at least at the beginning. So we find out about the existence of this secondary machine. We are introduced to Greer from Decima Technologies. And so talk a little bit about him.
So he is a former, I think it's MIB agent. So
Yeah.
it's like
MI6.
MI6.
He's not a
okay.
Men in Black.
Okay.
Well, technically,
Yeah.
kind of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but MI6,
Yes, MI6.
the
British spy.
Yeah.
He kind of got disillusioned with his own bureau, and that's when he said, "Huh. So the bureau that's supposed to be protecting my country isn't even protecting my own country because it's in bed with the Russians. So then why am I even doing this? Oh wait, nations don't matter. I'm just going to join the third or no, what do you call it? The corporate? No. What do you call that when the private sector?
Private sector, yes.
Yeah.
And that's when he started Decima Technologies. And through Decima Technologies, he goes and tries. He's trying to get his hooks in to like kind of run the world type fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So when he gets his hand on the second machine, which comes to be known as Samaritan, he's kind of basically given the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so he just like you said, he kind of works with it until he works for it and willingly.
Right. And so at this point, the machine is working with the government, spitting out relevant numbers while working with our person of interest team with the irrelevant numbers. And the project is called Northern Lights.
Yeah.
And they're exposed by a group called Vigilance, which at the time they seem to be a group that's railing against the government, railing against the loss of privacy that the government is enacting, and the surveillance and the loss of freedoms. Kind of a very interesting thing considering the times that we're living in now, right?
Yeah.
It's a kind of really on the nose. But they get outed, and so the Northern Lights project is sacked, and that's when Greer comes in and says, "Well, hey, Northern Lights didn't work for you guys, but I got Samaritan over here. Samaritan will do whatever you want, and you've got full control of this thing," which is something that the politicians, and especially that woman called Control, was kind of really, really looking to see if they can get that from the machine, right?
Yeah. And basically from here, things started to go downhill really quickly. Not in terms of like, the plot or anything. Like, well, yeah, the plot. Yeah. But no, not the plot. Everything started to go downhill from here because things just got worse and everything became more and more dangerous.
Worse for our heroes.
Yeah, worse for our heroes
And worse for society at large, right?
Yeah.
In a sense.
Well, no, not in a sense.
In
Definitely.
a sense.
In a sense, but remember, what's the ultimate
they
goal?
kind of did some good,
Right.
but the way they got to that good,
Yeah, but
like stuffing entire tunnels with the dead irrelevant people, yeah, that's kind of the not
even just that. They threatened to blow up the entire New York.
Well, that was
That's a little bit later.
that was a ploy. That was a plot to give them full control, because at the time, remember, they only gave the relevant feeds to New York City, and Greer and Decima wanted greater control. They wanted the entire country. They wanted the camera feeds for the entire country. So Samaritan did a lot of things that are kind of shady in
Yeah,
order
yeah.
to gain all that control and autonomy over the entire country
I'm talking
and the
about
entire world, right?
talking about the time with Shaw.
Well, yeah, and there were that's the other part of Samaritan. In order to create this perfect society, there were, I guess you want to say, deviants that
Yeah.
needed to be gotten rid of.
They called it the Great Filter, as
Right.
if they were like cleaning out all the dirty people out there, all the bad people out there, and yeah, basically left all the good people and
Right.
stuff.
So you can kind of make the case that Samaritan was trying to do some good,
They have good intentions.
right? But it's kind of like the whole Thanos argument, right?
Yeah.
Because Thanos, in his mind, he was trying to do some good also because he saw that there was too many people in the universe, which was drawing down resources. So what's the best way to handle that? Just kill half the universe. Samaritan kind of had the same goals in a sense, right? Not as extreme as Thanos, but kind of similar in the sense that, you know what, there's a certain population of society that are deviants that will go against the greater good. And his solution was, well, let's just kill them all. You know, if you don't conform to the world that I'm creating, then you gotta go. You know, and so then it became a battle between the two machines because again, it's a battle of ideology. You know, the machine is trying to do good, but in a very controlled manner and valuing human life. Samaritan, the ends justify the means. And so you had that struggle all the way up until the end. And even with Greer and Harold, they represented two sides of the coin, right? One side where Harold, again, very much in line with the machine's thinking, was, you know what? Every life is valuable and everybody is relevant. Greer was like, you're irrelevant. As long as society is doing well, if you don't fit in, you gotta go, you know?
Yeah.
So now let's get back to Vigilance because Vigilance becomes kind of like a tragic story for them, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Because here they are and they're thinking, you know what, we're fighting against the government, we're doing all this stuff, and it started out kind of benign, but as things went on they realized that the only way that they can get to their goals was using violence, right? And so they became bolder and bolder as the show went on, but just like everything else in Person of Interest, they were a pawn.
Yeah, because what they end up revealing is that, oh, what was the leader of Vigilance's name again?
What was his name? Hold on, I'll
Oh,
find out for you.
but basically that guy was unknowingly hired by Decima because Decima was like, okay, so how do we convince those guys in DC that they need our system? Hey, what if we create a terrorist group that's designed to scare them? Okay. So that's how Greer went about uh, recruiting the leader, who also himself had a tragic story, the leader of Vigilance,
Peter Collier,
Peter
Hey,
Collier.
Collier.
played by
Collier.
by Broadway actor and just regular actor and awesome actor, right?
Yeah.
Leslie Odom Jr.
Yes, he was Guy in Supernatural.
Mhm.
Well, shame he only had one episode.
Guy.
He was in Supernatural.
Yes, he was a Crossroads demon.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. That dude travels.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. So Peter, what happened with him is that his brother got picked up out of nowhere because he was apparently a terrorist. But the government was like, yeah, no, we can't really tell you anything, or else that might compromise stuff. And he was like, nah, that's my brother. Can you not? But the government said, yeah, no, sorry, we really have to. And then Peter was like, okay, fine, screw you.
Yeah.
His
so
brother ended
that's-
up dying, right?
Yeah. And he wasn't even at fault for whatever the heck they were accusing him of.
Yeah.
Right. He was accused by association because he was friends with somebody that was related to another terrorist, and it turns out that he was just, I think he was like his sponsor
Yes.
for
Yeah.
Alcohol Anonymous or something like that. So they got him completely wrong, but it led to his death, and that's what kind of
radicalized
Peter.
and
Yeah.
made him not liable. Made him moldable to Greer, unknowingly, of course, until it's sad because at the very end when they were like, "Yeah, we did it. We put those dirty government bastards on trial," and then Greer said, "Thanks." And he was like,
Mhm.
"Wait, but we captured you." No, we let you capture us because you're us. He was like, "What?" And they killed him off. Sadly, it's
Collier
god,
is dead.
Yeah.
sad.
So that was an interesting story, you know. And a lot of characters die in this show, right?
A lot.
Like, for example, one of the main characters of the show, um, at least through season 3, if I remember correctly, was the character Detective Joss Carter,
Yes.
which was played by Taraji P. Henson, a fantastic actress. Again, kind of going with the whole thing. The actors in the show are beyond belief. I mean, we're talking about Michael Emerson, who plays Harold Finch, Jim Caviezel, who plays John Reese. We haven't even talked about Kevin Chapman, who plays Lionel Fusco.
Hey, the Foscanator.
Amy Acker as Root, Sarah Shahai as Samin Shaw. So there's a lot of really, really great characters, but I think the thing that let me ask you a question: were you shocked at what happened with Joss Carter? Was that something that you saw coming, or
Yeah.
A little.
Definitely.
Especially when she was going off the wall like that. You kind of saw what direction they were going with that.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like a I want to say a turning point, not only for the team but in the show as well, right?
Yeah,
Because
it was.
at that point they really, really became focused on trying to stop everything. I think she was kind of like the emotional center and the anchor for the team. Whenever the team kind of went a little bit too far off, she was always the one that kind of brought them back to center and say, "Hey guys, chill. You're you're going a little bit off center here and stuff."
Yeah.
But her loss was like devastating to the team. You know, another person that we thought was dead, but turned out it wasn't, was Samin Shaw, right? And that was also another pivotal point because as emotionally devastating as the loss of Carter was, losing Shaw really kicked the team into high gear at that point, right?
It did.
Because at that point, they really, really went hard after Samaritan and the team, right? Because the thought was that she sacrificed herself to save the team from Samaritan and their operatives, right? And they really ramped it up like 200, 2,000% after that because they were looking for revenge, right?
Yeah.
I think Harold was trying to pull them back, but both Root, especially Root,
Yeah.
but Root and Reese were really, really putting the screws to Samaritan and Decima and their team, right?
Yeah, definitely. For sure. But the third, well, it turned out she actually wasn't dead. Because basically what happened was that, I mean, in a way you could say it's sort of worse than her death. But
Yeah.
yeah, it really
she
is.
got.
I'm not.
Well, what was the
not
number?
gonna lie.
There was 7,000
7,000.
simulated deaths. More than 7,000 simulated deaths.
And
So what were
all
they
of them-
trying to do to her?
Yeah.
So Samaritan.
They didn't kill her.
No.
They captured her, right?
Yeah, because they said, okay, we got to find this other machine's operatives. Like, what the hell's going on here? So Samaritan goes, well, what we could do is we could put a chip in her head, make the chip run simulations so that maybe we simulate her escaping, and in her escaping, we can find out where exactly their base of operations is. But she never gives it up because she's
a trained
yeah.
CIA operative, so it's good luck trying to get any information from her, right?
Yeah, because every single time she got close, and she didn't really realize it at first, but even before she even realized it, she was like, "Okay, I got to keep you guys safe." And she killed herself basically 7,000 times.
All of the times, right?
Hey, do you think that Person of Interest was kind of like the thing that created Happy Death Day?
No, sorry.
No way.
The rights to dying over and over again belong to Supernatural
No.
and Mystery Spot.
That's true.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
How many
Okay,
times
what
how
then?
many times did Dean die in that episode?
The
A whole bunch of times, like
Yes.
over 100.
There
right?
was one before that.
So much more than that.
There was one before that. But
Okay,
anyway,
what?
I don't remember. It was like I forgot.
Okay,
but
well,
whatever.
obviously the movie is Groundhog Day, but in terms of like
Yeah.
shows,
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, fine. Shows. Well, debatable. But anyway,
No, not debatable.
anyway.
So she would consistently kill herself,
Yeah.
kill herself, kill herself.
Because she always ended up harming like John Reese, and whenever it came down to Root, which she was like emotionally connected to, even though she had no emotions at all, she always ended up killing herself, basically before she could harm anybody else, and basically give up their location.
Yep.
But basically, so on and so forth. They just keep going on with the story. They're saving numbers constantly, and some of them even becoming relevant because they are mainly working irrelevant numbers. I think it was like second last episode or third last episode. They ended up saving the president out of nowhere, but
Mm-hmm.
the war increasingly becomes much more dangerous as they lose Root, who is basically, she's one of the team's members who is
She becomes a really
yeah.
big part of the team also, right?
She really does, because I think that she was the one who was more connected to the machine
Yes.
than even Harold himself,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Well,
debatable. But
no, it's not. She is, because Harold always did his best to distance himself
Yeah.
from the machine.
so I guess you could say Harold and the machine never really got a chance to actually. Well, they never really did even get a chance to talk for much of the show. It's only until like the end.
Well, I beg to disagree, because when he was initially teaching it, you had a buttload of time to talk to it.
Oh well, okay.
He
fine,
never really had a chance to bond with it.
Yeah.
There's what I'll give you.
Yeah. Okay.
And
That's
and
better.
it's good that you said that, because Root even mentioned that in season 5. She was like, you never gave the machine a name,
Or
right?
even a voice.
right? And that was purposeful because Harold wanted to keep that distance from the machine. He didn't want to get emotionally attached to it at all. It was just a machine in his mind, right?
Yeah, and Root obviously. Well, she was killed by one of the Samaritan operatives, Jeff Blackwell, who was just
My name's Jeff.
Yeah.
no disgusting.
Yes.
Disgusting. He was just
My
there.
name is
And-
Jeff.
And Root died in the vein of saving Harold.
in saving Harold. Well, honestly,
she
what?
literally
Yeah.
sacrificed herself for Harold.
That everything in this show led up, especially with him partnering with Reese and Shaw and etc. etc. It all led up to Harold going dark at the end, because all of his time it was there was just one constant throughout the entire show, which was everything that they always tried protecting Harold Finch.
And Harold had his set of rules, right?
Yeah,
That
and
was super important for him,
he had a
especially
moral
when
code.
especially when it came to the machine, right?
Yeah, like obviously he didn't want the machine to grow larger than he didn't want it to reach its full potential, but he also in doing so, he also didn't want to harm people. Obviously, that was their whole thing. But at some point or another, it was just too much. They had already lost Root, they lost Joss, and they almost lost Shaw. They've almost lost practically everybody in the show. So
Yeah,
They
how many
lost
times?
Elias, bro.
they lost Elias too, which even though he wasn't there for a majority of the time to help the cause, he still meant something because, yeah, and that's yeah.
There's one guy that we need to talk about before we we get to the end of a person of interest, and I nominate him to be in the next Fast and the Furious movie, and that's Lionel Fusco. Because
Fuscinator.
how many times did that dude either get shot or was at the point of death, or it was in like a really, really bad spot where he was about to get killed, and the man survived every single time. He is kind of like the Tyrese of
Yeah,
of
bro.
person of interest, right?
That's
If
why
we're
they
talking
call
about
him,
Fast and the Furious, right?
That's why they call him the Fuscinator, because he's a literal god. There, nothing can stop him. It's like if let's just put it this way: if he's holding a grudge against somebody, he's gonna come by like the freaking Terminator, bro. There's nothing you could do to stop this man. He will destroy.
No, like, jeez. Wow, where do you start? He was in like the very first episode too. Like
Mhm.
he was kind of at first he was John's arm's length, kind of like, hey, so HR is a thing. I would have let you go and not be a corrupt cop anymore, but you really kind of have to stay a corrupt cop so that I can get the deets on these guys.
The team
Yeah.
kind of abused Fusco
Yeah.
throughout
Yeah.
the seasons, right?
Yeah.
Like he was literally under their thumb for the first 3 seasons, right?
Oh,
I
God.
think-
3 seasons.
Yeah. So I think out of all the characters, he showed the most growth
Oh yes,
in
for
terms
sure.
of from where he started to where he ended up. Reese had always had a predetermined path.
Yeah,
That was
Yeah.
always, you knew it from the start. Harold stayed Harold up until mid season 5. That's when he changed. Root, I guess, would be the next character
yeah.
that had probably the biggest growth,
Yeah.
and Shaw stayed Shaw the entire time.
Yeah.
To
Well,
a degree,
To a-
no.
yeah.
like
Obviously.
she instead of becoming a heartless psychopath, she was a softer heartless psychopath, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she did have some growth, but she was still kind of all the way through the same type of character. But Fusco changed a lot, man, especially from those first seasons, because like you said, when Reese called, he was forced to kind of do what Reese told him to do, right?
Yeah.
And Reese knew it. So, and there was a lot of cringy moments where it's like, oh man, I feel bad for Fusco, with all the stuff that they're
Poor
making him
guy.
do, you know.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but kind of apt that he was literally the last person to know about everything that was going on, right?
That was horrible.
Like, it took, no lie, It took him 5 seasons and almost
Oh, man.
2 episodes left in season 5 before they decided, you know what? Let's let Fusco know what's going on.
Oh, that was horrible, bro.
I think at the beginning it was because they didn't trust him,
Oh no, not by a long shot.
right? But like what do you they keep saying that they did it because they wanted to protect them.
Well, so it's season 5.
Do you really buy that though? I mean,
I do,
I
because
do.
at that point he was part of the team. He just wasn't part of the core team.
They trusted him at some point or another. He was trusted so much that they didn't want him. They didn't want to include him on anything.
is it because he was the only member on the team that had a kid?
Yeah,
Is-
he had the most to lose, honestly.
Yeah. That's mainly why they grew to trust him so much, because honestly at the beginning they really just abused him until they started to realize what he was actually working for. His intentions were absolutely pure good, and they started to realize that. That's when they started to trust him a little bit more.
And again, that was really because of Detective Carter, right?
Yeah.
Detective Carter, again, she was kind of like the emotional center of the show. And Fusco learned a lot from her, But, I still am bothered by the fact that the excuse was like we were trying to protect you, because if that was the case and knowing that he has a kid, why would they put him in so many difficult circumstances?
Well-
I mean, the man got shot at least 2 or 3 times a season.
Yeah,
Right?
but if you really think about it, that's actually much. Yeah,
Some of those
he's
times
still in
he put
danger.
himself in the line of fire
But-
too.
It's also his
True.
police work. It's not his duty. It's not his responsibility
there's that.
for him to go up against a freaking evil artificial intelligence. That's not his job, and that's exactly how they wanted it to be.
Right, but if that was the case, then why involve him in the first place? And I
Because-
know he has all the connections because he used to be a bad guy, so he knows all the players and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if their whole reasoning for not telling him the truth was because we were trying to protect them, then they could have gone to a number of other people and probably, enlisted them as an asset. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
No,
but
So-
then
but-
you have the whole thing of, okay, we got to keep this guy at arm's length now.
Yeah, they.
But with Fusco, he eventually proved himself.
He did, big time.
Yes.
Right?
You're gonna have a much more difficult time with someone you barely know. For instance, John Reese wasn't even the first man in the suit.
And I was just thinking about that, right? So explain a little bit about that, because that was super important to, not only understanding how Harold picked the people that he picked, but kind of like the reasons why he does what he does, right?
So in the very first 1 to 3 seasons, Reese was called the man in the suit because they can never ID the guy.
He was the Batman of New York.
Yeah.
But
right down to the way he talks, right?
Yes,
Oh, man.
exactly.
whisper.
But before that, there was another man in the suit who was also a government-y type dude. He played it a little more fast and loose, and he was a little more rough with the people that he saved or
Mhm.
didn't save. And that kind of contributed towards Harold's paranoia. I'm a very private person type approach to things, because this guy ended up betraying him, and well, he kind of died for it.
Yeah.
Not Harold's fault, but he endangered himself.
Harold has such a distrust of not even. It's not even just other people. It's also himself too. He has a. It's a huge trust problems for Harold mainly,
Mm-hmm.
and that's even though that happened, that also contributes to the ending of our show with John Reese. But But yeah, we'll get into that later. We'll
Yeah.
get into that later. I'm
But
going
you
ahead of myself.
picked up on something. Dark Harold.
Yes, I wanted to get into that.
Let's
Yes.
talk about Dark Harold, because that was really a game changer for the show.
That was insane,
And
bro.
that really started the events that ended Person of Interest, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the story. So
It's like it really showed how powerful not just the machine is, but somebody who is when the machine is put into like sort of the a person. Okay, it gives an idea of what a machine in control looks like, and that was definitely a huge thing because, bro, this dude was literally infiltrating freaking top secret file bases.
NSA, the Federal Reserve.
There's like, and it was with ease too. There wasn't he has a limp leg. He's literally walking around, and he doesn't even need to hide his identity.
he looks like a librarian.
Yeah,
He's definitely not what you would picture as a superhero.
yeah, and this dude literally comes in with like, oh my god, it's just you need to watch the show to understand how crazy what a machine in the right hands, sort of wrong hands, looks like.
And it's funny because Elias kind of foreshadowed the rise of Dark Harold, right?
Yeah.
Because he even said it himself. He was like, you're probably the scariest. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he was like, you're probably the scariest one out of the entire team.
Beware the quiet ones.
Yeah, it's always the quiet ones.
Yeah. So that led to the rise of Harold, and I think it happened when he kind of realized that he's been trying to play by the rules, and he's been trying to play by this honor code that he has, and it in his mind it really hasn't gotten anywhere. They were losing, and they were losing badly to Samaritan.
Yeah.
They had to really kind of alter their lives. They had to live in secret and in shadow, because every time that they went out, a camera would spot them, and then instantly their lives would be in danger.
Yeah.
The machine had to actually create alternate personas for them, and they actually had to live that for the last 2 seasons, right?
Yeah.
Like John Reese became a cop, which is ironic, right?
Yeah.
But the machine deemed that it was a good thing for him to be in that position, because if he's going around helping people and shooting people, he's a cop, so nobody's really going to question him that much,
Yeah.
in a sense,
To
right?
some extent.
Unless Internal Affairs really takes it
Right.
a very hard look at him.
And then Harold was a college professor, which makes sense,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
What was Shaw? Shaw was the odd one out, right?
Yeah.
She was working in like a Macy's perfume aisle,
Makeup,
but
boutique.
she was also given the role of like a robber, basically.
She was the driver.
She sucked at her job with the perfume thing. She was
Yeah.
literally spraying it in their faces.
Well,
like,
she did.
Smell this.
She did that out of spite.
Yeah,
but-
I know. But
Root was the only one that had the change, right? Because her persona was very fluent. Almost every hour sometimes, right?
yeah.
She would change into a different person. So there were times she would walk into the lair and she'd be wearing a wedding dress, and another time
Oh, God.
she'd be a UPS driver, and another time she'd be whatever.
She had like the dog thing with those costumes.
Oh, the mascot type of
the
thing.
mascots. for,
Yeah,
like, a
she was
kid's
always
party.
whatever the machine needed her to be.
Yeah.
But again, it was to the point where Harold realized, this isn't living and we're not winning, and maybe I need to loosen some of my moral code and do what's necessary to win this fight. And that happened in season 5. And boy, did it happen quickly, and boy, did he change, right?
Yeah. Finch's thing was that he, you know, when
Everyone underestimated him, but little did they know he was always playing defense.
Yeah. But
They never saw him playing offense.
Yes. But like, there was a point where Harold was like holding a gun.
Well,
Which
he used the first time he used a tranquilizer. I was like, look, he said he'd never do it, but he did the thing.
Yeah.
He's using a gun even though it's a tranquilizer.
No, but
Yeah,
even
he
at
shot
the
that,
end,
that French prime minister, right?
yeah. But even at the end, he was holding a gun.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, that just shows how much Harold has changed, because it's like, his moral code was never to wield a gun. It's almost like Batman. And at the end, he literally wielded a gun. So
He never really got to shoot it.
he never
but
got to shoot it. But
He
like,
was obviously more than prepared to do so.
yeah, the fact that he was prepared to kill was just something crazy in of itself.
So let's talk about the ending. And before we talk about it, I have to mention that this is a show that was produced by J.J. Abrams.
Yeah.
And so J.J. Abrams has kind of a reputation for starting projects very, very strong, but not quite nailing the landing when it comes to ending something. We saw it in Star Wars. We've seen it in Lost. We've seen it in Alias and other shows that he's been associated with. First of all, let's talk about the ending. The ending is the big showdown between the Machine and Samaritan, right? And
Yeah.
Harold has a big part to do with that, because what he does is the only thing that he surmises he can do is introducing an internet killing virus,
Ice 9.
Ice 9, which not only will destroy both machines, but cripple the entire world when it
Yeah.
comes to internet access, which, as you know, internet is everywhere. Internet is integral to our daily lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So he goes the nuclear route. And at the end, we lose John Reese, which,
Yeah.
again,
You saw it coming.
you saw it coming, but still, it was
Yeah.
pretty shocking and
I wouldn't
emotional.
say it's shocking.
I
It
wouldn't say it's
just
shocking.
sucked.
Yeah, exactly. And it was an emotional way that they let him go.
Mm.
A very heroic ending for John Reese, right?
Yeah.
But at the end, our team prevails. Samaritan is defeated. The Machine is gone, or so we think, right? Because we had that last
It's alive.
shot.
Like I said, it would
It
be.
was already pointed towards the Machine. Because remember, the whole point of what's his name being on the top of the roof with the satellite is so that he could beam the Machine up to the satellite that Samaritan was going to try to ride the storm out in. And you saw in that brief clip, the Machine was winning.
But the
Honestly.
machine was equipped with Ice 9.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yes, it was. That was the whole thing, because remember, we went through the simulations where the machine could never beat Samaritan. The machine, that piece of code, was equipped with Ice 9. That was the machine then went up to the satellite and utilized that as a weapon to destroy Samaritan.
Oh.
So
But it said taking over core.
right, because at that point the damage was done by the Ice 9. The machine on its own could not defeat Samaritan, you know. But the implication was that by sending it up there with the virus, the computer virus, that both machines would die.
Oh.
And that's not what
Okay.
happened. You know, the machine did survive somehow.
Well, no. It was just a copy of the machine.
But the original machine died.
Yeah.
Oh,
With-
yes, the
with-
original Machine
with
died.
the Ice 9 attack.
Yeah. And
That was orchestrated by Harold.
I hate to say it, but they spoiled that it was gonna survive. Literally. Like, there was, at the beginning of the season, they had already given away the fact that it was gonna survive either way. Because at the beginning of the season, that's why I was like, oh, the machine's gonna survive. I was a little bit surprised at the end, because I thought that was something different. But they had the machine. They had it at the very beginning. There was a scene where it was like basically fast forward in the future after their whole battle with Samaritan, talking about, we don't know if we won, we don't know if we lost, etc., etc. Something weird and
That was only this episode.
no, that was at the beginning of the episode, and it was with
Yeah, of the episode,
And-
not the season.
no at the beginning of the
season
season.
premiere, it had somewhat of a kind of like the thing
Yeah.
that the recording
Yeah,
at the
it's
very
like-
end.
Oh, that was in the beginning of the season too?
And
Yeah.
at first, I thought it was Shaw talking, but then I realized
Root.
Rue. I thought it was Root talking, but apparently it ended up being the machine. So midway through the season, we found out that the machine would survive anyway, which
Right.
was kind of dumb.
So what'd you guys think of the
Whatever.
ending?
I mean, it was okay as far as happy endings go, but I mean, it wasn't the absolute greatest.
It was horrible.
Really? You thought it was that bad?
It was.
I
not
thought it
good.
was a good way. I kind of agree with AJ. It wasn't a spectacular ending, but I kind of felt that was always going to be the case with J.J. Abrams and stuff. But I don't think it's as bad as some of his endings for other things. You know,
Don't even get
Yeah,
me started with Rise of
obviously.
Skywalker.
The whole
you know.
entire Star Wars.
Yeah. So I think
So
I think for what it was, I think it did a good job of kind of wrapping up everything and stuff. And Eli, you disagree, right?
definitely, that was such a. I'm sorry.
You want
but-
all the characters to die every
No,
single time.
no. I just felt that Reese wasn't fit for that sort of heroic.
He was
Because
always fit for that.
Honestly, it felt like I don't know. I'm. This is sort of gonna sound weird, but Reese wasn't given enough character development as the rest of the characters, in my opinion. Like Carter changed him, obviously morally, but it wasn't by much. You had other characters who changed a lot more.
No,
more
I,
than-
I
but
agree
like Harold,
with that.
Root, every other character changed more than him, and I felt that him being the hero of the story was okay, but it wasn't. At some point in the show, I started. I had like some sort of feeling that he wasn't the main character of the show anymore, and that was a feeling that came during the show multiple times, as he was always gonna be, as Root said it, Harold's, what was it? Harold's
Big
flying
lug?
monkey. No,
Mhm.
something like that. Monkey helper, and that's literally what it felt like the for a majority of season 3 to season 4 and somewhat of season 5. So, given that, it sort of felt a little bit off with John Reese, who essentially he was a main character, but almost a side character in a way during the show. Putting him in the limelight was sort of a little bit different, a weird thing.
Well-
And I would have honestly, and it's also gonna sound weird, Fusco being there would have been a little bit better in my opinion, and it wouldn't make sense. Yeah.
No.
Because no, you want to know why? Because it wouldn't have made much more sense, but it would have been a much better ending to me, if you understand what I'm saying.
Wouldn't?
Because Fusco proving himself at the end would have been weird. As much as it doesn't make sense, I would have much preferred that over Reese being being in the
I
limelight.
think
It's like-
Fusco did enough to prove himself
Okay,
Yes.
throughout
fine.
the show.
No, I'm sort of on the fence about that.
I'm gonna agree with one thing, that Reese became kind of a secondary character, but given the fact that the show is really an ensemble show, you had to have that changeover where the main focus was him and Harold from season 1 and 2, where they changed into an ensemble. Some of his screen time had to go. So I can see where you say where kind of like he
was
was
pushed
no
aside.
longer the main focus of the show, but I think the way that he was never going to get a happy ending.
They
I'm-
say it
no.
all the time
That's
throughout
fine.
all the seasons.
No, I'm not
He's
saying-
on borrowed time.
No, I'm not saying that you should let Reese survive. He obviously needed to die either way. I'm just saying a better character would be fit for that role at the very end. I'd rather have Harold just stay there.
No.
Stay there and do it himself.
Because he still has someone he can go to.
Who?
Grace.
At the very end, he went to Grace.
And that was dumb as hell. That was stupid. Oh my god, that was
No,
so stupid
I-
on every freaking level.
The whole
It's not even funny. He was put to death. He's a ghost for a reason. You can't just return
he
to a
was
life like that.
ghost because of the machines.
No, but it's not. Oh my god. Yes, I understand that, but the fact that he was able to return to a life like that, it's literally like he's from the grave, and that's so oh my god, it's
But
so
I think it makes sense for his character because
no.
His
they
whole
had many conversations, him and Reese, on do you think that we get a life after this? That was kind of like their
No.
theme.
and he was the only one who had a chance for having a life after
No.
And
this.
even before he met Reese, those were the kind of conversations that he had with his partner Nathan, right? Where Nathan was kind of imploring him, you need to step out of the shadows and get a life. And so I think at the end he realized, you know what?
No.
I've given so much that and seeing Reese die the way that he did and having the conversation with the machine about everyone dies alone, I think that really struck a nerve with Harold, and he said, you know what, I haven't been living, I've just been existing.
But that's literally essentially the purpose of Harold. Honestly, I just didn't feel that was right, because the whole idea, I took everything with Nathan Ingram with having a life as a way to put a no to a life, because if you're literally building a machine for the government, you're valuable on every level, and some ways not just collateral damage almost. That doesn't feel right, the fact that he should be
Okay,
able to
but
go back
Then
to
the
his
government
life.
said Northern Lights is completely done. They
But-
don't even have a need to go after him anymore.
Obviously,
Well, you
but
also have
if
to
you're-
remember, nobody knows who Harold is.
I know that, but
He's been in the shadows the entire time.
I know, but my whole thing with being in the shadows is that if you're in the shadows, if you're a ghost, you stay a ghost, and that's just how being a ghost works. Because you can't, even though he's like a top tier level hacker, I just don't feel right with a ghost. Like I said, coming back from the grave, that's just not something that sits right with the world as it is. Because even though there's no need for him to be tracked down or anything like that, it just doesn't make sense.
I think what you're forgetting here is that
He's also a loose end.
no.
Not anymore. That's
But-
what we're trying to say.
But I
Nah,
think
bro.
the thing that you're forgetting is that when he met up with Grace, who Grace was his fiance in his previous life, right? Grace is not Grace anymore. Remember, she was a number, and he gave her a new identity, and she's living in Paris. So there's no reason why he can't show up and not be Harold anymore, because Grace is not Grace anymore.
No.
So
no.
it's very easy for him to come back because he doesn't have to be Harold anymore.
I don't feel
You know
that
what I'm
he
saying?
deserve-
I
he,
think-
he
I think
deserves a
that's-
happy ending.
I think that's the point you're missing. He's not going back to Grace as Grace being Grace. She is another person
yeah,
living
I
another
know what
life.
you're saying. I know what you're saying.
So
but
he can kind of slide into that and say, you know what? I'm no longer Harold. I'm Barry.
no, bro.
You know,
I just don't feel that.
Doug
If not,
Bubkus.
yeah, you can have a happy ending, but not every character deserves a happy ending.
Okay, and
Like,
not every character got a happy ending.
if you stay in the shadow, if you're in the shadows, you stay in the shadows. If you're a hero,
Not
it's
if you
literally-
don't have a reason to stay in the shadows.
Nah, bro. If you're,
Yeah, the threat was
I
neutralized.
know, but if a hero, I just feel that, and this has popped up in other shows where I've said that they don't deserve a happy ending. If you're a hero, I just don't feel that, because in an actual reality, heroes don't get happy endings. That's just the reality of it. And that the same thing applies to Harold Finch and the rest. Not every character deserves a happy ending.
Okay. Well, we're gonna agree to disagree on that point. What did you think of the show overall?
It was great. It was great.
it was good for a TV show. There was a lot of fillers, but for the most part, it was a really, 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 really good
Didn't
TV
feel
show.
like filler.
Yeah, there were some. There were
Yeah, there was some.
there were
There was
fillers.
some.
Okay, but I
The
never
numbers-
really. It never felt like it.
Right.
Nah,
There
bro.
there are some shows where it's like, oh gosh, this has nothing to do. Can we just get to
No,
the
but
point?
even
I mean,
still,
we had that issue with The Mandalorian, right? And The Mandalorian is a much shorter season, but it was super pronounced there, right?
no, even
um,
still, I feel that it was pronounced here as well.
No, there were some episodes that were filler. There's no doubt. When you have 22 and 23 episode seasons, you're going to have filler. But I think what the point that AJ is making is that even though we did have filler episodes, they didn't feel as pronounced as some other shows with their filler episodes. right?
Somewhat. I don't know.
Like there's shows, The Flash,
okay,
right?
But
where
no.
you can tell that this is a filler episode, and it's like, oh my gosh, this thing sucks.
For person of interest, I felt that it was more pronounced towards the end, especially when they were working against Samaritan. The fact that they were working on numbers when they had larger problems at hand was
The
something
numbers
of a-
were always Samaritan.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were
but-
Samaritan based.
yeah, but
No,
they
but
were-
I do
the
agree
Dominic,
with that. It felt weird because you know what? You literally know that there's this bigger threat and you're still working the numbers. But I think it was the reason that they did it
I know it's
was to
because-
make sure that the machine was working correctly.
okay, but
That's why.
it could have been.
Yeah,
There
you could have
should've-
you
there
could have
would've
wrapped
been
that
more
up in
direct-
like 2 episodes.
There would have been more direct approaches that they could have taken.
Yeah, they could have wrapped up that whole is the machine okay once Samaritan destroyed it. They could have wrapped that up in like 2 episodes and gotten into the bigger story.
And super duper last thing, the whole thing was Dominic was like so filler, and that's why I couldn't appreciate Dominic as a character, because he screamed out filler to me, and there was little to no purpose for his character. That's why even though Dominic had an awesome character, he just wasn't right there. He didn't fit in.
Okay, I can kind of go with that. You know,
Yeah.
there's I guess the reason you had Dominic there was to create a conflict for Elias and kind of like have a foil for Elias.
Yeah.
It was
And
kind
stuff.
of his story coming full circle because he was once Dominic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. But you know what? You're right. If you take out the Dominic storyline,
everything.
the show really doesn't suffer
everything's
for
the
it,
same.
right? I don't think you can say the same for Vigilance and HR and things of that and
you
Decima.
definitely can.
You know, those were villains that were really integral to the show. I think Dominic was kind of like one of those things where it's like, okay, if you take him out, the show doesn't suffer, right? So, but what Person of Interest does is that it brings up very, very interesting points.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be our second topic. And, you know, we're kind of running a little bit long, and maybe we're going to have to revisit this topic again. But I think we should at least mention it a little bit. And that's the topic of AI and the rise of AI and how it impacts humanity itself, right? So in the show, they kind of made the AIs almost like deities, right? Root
Yeah.
continually called them gods.
Greer too.
Greer too, right? Harold never did that because Harold again was more grounded, and he was really into the, you know, kind of crippling the AIs because he knew the dangers. He saw the dangers up front when he was creating it. That's why he had to destroy the AI a couple of times before he got to the last version of the machine, because on some of them the learning curve was really, really great. There were times where the machine actually acted against his best interest, right? And so I guess the question is, especially with the proliferation of AIs in our everyday lives, like Alexa and Siri and Google and things like that, is having AIs really a good thing? I mean, do you see? We've seen the movies.
I have
You've
two
seen,
words for you.
You've seen Terminator, right?
One is Skynet, but then two is Cortana. Oh wait, no. 5 kind of screwed that up. So no, Cortana is the same as Skynet now.
Okay.
Oh God.
But do you see? So I guess one of the things, and in 2017, there was actually an AI symposium,
What the heck is that?
and one of the great minds of our time, Stephen Hawking, he actually warned the symposium of the threat of AI and how it could literally cause the extinction of humanity. He saw the positives of AI. He saw what AI could possibly do for humanity in terms of you know it's literally can make calculations, and it doesn't take emotion into effect. Maybe AI can stop droughts. Maybe it could stop famine. Maybe it could stop. Those are all positive things, but he also made the case that, you know what, an AI may grow in intelligence so much and realize that we're really the problem on this earth and we're the ones that are causing all these issues. It'd be very easy for an AI to you know be instrumental in a disaster that could devastate humanity, right? And so he made the warning. What do you guys think about that train of thought?
I think it doesn't help when just the other day we have robots doing backflips.
Boston Dynamic.
Yeah.
So
So
have you seen that
throw
video?
that into the mix.
No, but I've
By God.
seen videos of AIs doing crazy stuff like
No, that was just a robot. Now imagine an AI
robots,
controlling those robots.
Yeah, I know.
And coming to that conclusion.
Order 66.
It was literally
literally
doing
what it is.
parkour. So I'm going to show you the video real quick of this robot doing parkour. Now,
Yes, that's the
Hey,
video I
bro.
showed him or tried to show him.
Yep.
Bro, it's fast. Not
Well,
gonna
no,
No, just
keep,
wait.
Keep look.
and he made it.
Wait,
You gotta
wait.
wait.
It gets even better.
Well, he's walking up the steps.
Is he gonna do it yet? Is he gonna do it yet?
Oh, he's jumping.
Do it. No. Come on.
Come on, bro. What are you doing?
Hard-
Whoa!
Hardcore parkour
Hey,
by these robots.
Come
It's
on.
going to be amazing what this robot does right now.
George, come on. Do it. Well, actually,
Hey,
come on. Are you gonna do it? You gonna do it?
Hold on. And 1, 2, now.
Freaking black flipping robots.
Yeah, bro. You should try doing the. Hey, yo.
Robots that do backflips, robots that do parkour. Seamless, right?
Yes, without
Yeah.
flaw.
Now, like AJ posited, imagine a robot like that has an AI intelligence in it.
I
That
personally
could be pretty
think-
scary.
I personally think the negatives outweigh the positives. Like, you make one mistake and you got Samaritan or Skynet.
Well, see, I don't think that it's to that extreme, but I do see a problem with AIs. And technology, as of right now, is already bad. There's so many things that's wrong with technology and growth, because AIs are almost like deities in a way. If you can really, especially like if you have power to make the decision of whether a species can live or die or not, that's a huge decision. And especially when it plays into this whole thing with AIs becoming bad for humanity, yeah, they really pose a threat to humanity as we see it right now. And any species really. It poses a threat for actual life.
So Is there any scenario where you can say that AI might be a thing for good here?
Well, I think person of interest also makes that case because you have a controlled version, the machine, which actually does the good. And again, for all of Samaritan's flaws, I mean, you look at what it did to the healthcare system. It actually made it that much more efficient. You look at the thing Greer showed Harold, where they were really like this close to eliminating world hunger. And like, so you have those things, but it's really a double-edged sword here.
I don't even think it's a double-edged sword. I think, given the fact that, because you know what, if I'm being completely honest, humanity is a problem as of right now, because a lot of what we're doing is always generally bad. You have, excuse me, global warming has become code red already. I think that was like a month ago or something, or like a couple of weeks ago, and that's really bad. And it's only like maybe 100 years before the effects come in bad.
I mean, it's already bad.
And it's
This
that's
past
my
year,
thing.
half of America has been on fire or underwater.
Yeah, I know, and that's my thing, because if with everything, with people saying, I mean, we expected global warming to come in code red like maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years later. It's already happening now. And that's my thing. Humanity is not becoming, well, yeah, in a way, becoming a problem for this world, for the rest of the species with extinction. So honestly, with I don't see how anybody has that moral code that Harold Finch does nowadays. That's especially with people who are becoming so blinded by science and technology's growth. It really doesn't seem like Harold Finch and that character is possible in when AI does happen to become a thing.
So let me ask you this, because, and I'm going to go back to that symposium where Professor Hawking spoke. And one of the things that he said is that our time on Earth is now numbered because we've passed the point of no return. And so one of the things that he posited was that humans will need to leave Earth if we are to continue as a species. Um, he believes that space programs are really humanity's top priority, with a view to eventually colonizing suitable planets for human habitation, because we've overpopulated the planet. And if we don't leave, there's going to be serious consequences for our species. You know, he this is a literal quote that he said. I believe we have reached the point of no return. Our Earth is becoming too small for us. Global population is increasing at an alarming rate, and we are in danger of self-destructing. So, given that, and you mentioned it, Eli, and that was a really, really good point. Given that, don't you kind of think that maybe an AI is necessary to help us make that jump from Earth to another place? Because usually when we're dealing with trying to develop that technology, it takes decades. It takes a long time. And like you said, we're in code red as a planet. And he mentioned we're at the point of no return. Wouldn't having an AI be kind of beneficial to help us get off and save us as a species?
Well, you know, I hate to be the pessimist here, but honestly, I can't really see any situation where an AI helping us plays out for the better of humanity, or really anything at all at this point. We are in the process of self-destructing. There's literally, and like I said, I hate to be the pessimist, but as you know, he literally said it, our days are numbered. And at this point, I really don't see any hope other than the space program, which frankly, I I'd say that's a 50-50 chance. And yeah, you know what? It's not even, there's not that much hope.
Space is our hope, But what if instead of AIs being the problem, it's the xenomorphs?
Oh God. Yeah, what the aliens are gonna come here to warn us and stuff.
No, but like again, it's everything with us is a double-edged sword. God damn it! Because yes, the AI can help you. Yes, it can make the decisions that, but then there will always be that. Like no matter what people do, they will always try. They will always find a way to mess it up. Like even if you do make this awesome AI and hey, it makes these awesome projections and gets us light years ahead in terms of technology, and we do build spaceships. Like I don't know, like it just there's way too many. You deal with a lot of I
Yeah.
I can't say anymore other than you don't really know where to go from here and it be like a surefire productive move. Because whenever people take one step forward, you really always go two steps backward too. I mean,
Yeah.
uh
Totally agree with you, man. And I also want to put this out there. Like I said before, I hate to be the pessimist, but you know what? Frankly, it needs to be said. It doesn't even really look like saving humanity is our priority anymore. It really just seems like people have been, ignoring the facts.
It's the proliferation of anti-science, really.
Yeah, and it's not even just that. Like I said, there hasn't been an effort to try and change things. You have environmentalists who are doing the best they can. Shout out to them. They're doing the best they can to start this change, but frankly, there's just nobody's listening and nothing's being done, and that's just the reality of it.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a tough subject to really deal with and stuff, and I think unfortunately our time is short today, but maybe we'll revisit this on another episode because I think it's super important. It's something that really affects everybody, right? And
Everybody.
you're seeing more and more of a shift towards trying to build computers and robots and things like that that will help humanity, but um maybe people like Stephen Hawking have to be really out and center to kind of ring the bell to say, hey, guess what? It's kind of like what Ian Malcolm said in Jurassic Park, right? We were so focused on whether we could, we never thought whether we should, right?
yeah.
And I think that's where Hawking is really trying to rein people in. It was like, yeah, there are huge technological developments and advancements that we're doing, but we also have to look at the moral side of it and make sure that the things that we create don't end up being the things that destroy us.
Yeah.
Right? All right. On that really, really deep and kind of depressing note,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
we're gonna wrap this bad boy up. Again, we want to thank everybody for joining us on this episode. We got a little deep toward the end there, and maybe a little bit morbid and whatnot. We apologize, but it's a discussion that really needs to be said and had. And sometimes you got to be uncomfortable talking about stuff if you're going to really
Yep.
make changes and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Definitely.
So, on that note, again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I am Walt.
Prolific, semi-pessimistic, a little joyorific. AJ?
Machinery AI Eli. AI Eli. Yes. That is amazing. AI Eli is
That one
literal
was
God.
actually really good.
The only God, the only AI that is good. The good AI. I'm the good AI. Yes.
There you go.
And I will save the world. And may our AIs cross again. No. May our
intranet paths cross again.
may our
Our circuits.
That'd actually be really bad.
Our circuits cross.
You're just gonna blow
It's
it
like
up.
crossing.
Yeah, you're trying to blow up the podcast now? What are you trying to do?
Is it like crossing streams in Ghostbusters? Bad.
Oh God,
What?
that's terrible. Yeah, in Ghostbusters, if you cross the electromagnetic laser streams, you'd actually be doing some really bad science stuff, and you'd blow up like half the planet or something.
Yeah, wouldn't it like rip a hole in space and time or something like
That
that?
was
Coincidentally,
Ghostbusters?
they use that to close a hole in space and time.
There you go. Yeah, that was Ghostbusters. It was deep,
Yeah.
especially the Marshmallow Man.
Oh.
That was deep.
Yeah.
Marshmallow Man's coming back in their movie.
Yes.
gonna
There is
be
a movie?
There's going to be a new movie coming out soon.
Afterlife.
Oh my God. Ghostbusters, the new one sucked.
Okay, well, we haven't seen the new. Well, the
Yeah,
new one hasn't even
there's
come
a
out
next
yet.
one coming out.
Whatever.
It has mini Marshmallow Men.
Oh God. May our
You even saw the. Okay, sorry, we're going off on tangents. We gotta end.
hold on. May our terminal system. What does terminal mean, real quick?
End or
End.
death.
Okay. May our terminal system
Hey, I know.
cross again.
May our .exes.
That's worse. You're
Cross
trying
again.
to kill the. You're trying to.
No, that's an
It's not-
executable.
What does that mean?
dot-
Execute command.
Yeah. .exe is usually you click on it and it opens up. It starts a program. It's an executable.
I always thought that was like something bad. Like you're executing a program.
No, that only happens in the Matrix.
Executing a program means
Well,
carrying
yeah,
it out.
Carrying it out, but no, forget it. May our I was about to say DXE. .exe programs cross.
Okay.
Sonic .exe is coming for you tonight from the 3 a.m. call that you made.
Stop threatening the listeners.
Yes.
Later, people.